Morning, grade 6. So today we are going to be moving on. I thought that I would actually film a proper video. Now, with that though, without being screen recorded, that means that you won't always see exactly what I see, because as you can see what's happening here, the light throws off with the video. So if you follow along in your PowerPoint, this will be a lot easier for you too. Alright, so this is just the explanation portion. What we've done is we've covered fractions, we've covered ratios, and what we're going into is percents today, right? So we're covering the introduction to percent. Now when we talk about percent, right, what we want to think of, first of all, is that idea of cent, right? And we'll get more into that a little bit more. Let's say I have this right here is going to be grains of rice, right? So let's say I have 100 grains of rice. This is 100, you can pause it, you can count it, this is 100 grains of rice, okay? If I have 100 grains of rice on my table I'm going to try to make for supper, right? And I drop 11 of them, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, right? I drop 11 of them. We've learned to represent that as a fraction, as a ratio, no n there, not a ration, as a ratio, and now what we're going to do is we're going to investigate it as a percent, right? So as a fraction, what we have is we have 11 rice on the floor over 100 rice, right? Or we would have 89 rice still on the table out of the 100, right? A ratio, we could represent that, it would be amount of rice on the floor to the amount of rice on the table. But now what we're going to investigate is looking at it now as a percent. And what does that actually mean? Okay, so we're representing percent. There are 4 ways that we can describe this. Now, as I can see, you can't really see the video too well, so again, follow in the PowerPoint. But there are 4 ways to describe the green part on the grid. So here we have a grid. There's green and there's blue. Right? Once again, this is a 100. The reason why that we're always going to be using 100, at least for this lesson, is that percent is another name for hundreds. Right? When you see that word percent, it has 2 parts to it. Per and then cent. Think about things like centimeters, centennials. Cent equals 100, right? So we have 45 green squares here, right? You can represent that, so that's 45 out of 100 squares are green. You can represent that as a sentence, right? You can also write a fraction. 45 over 100 of the grid is green, right? 45, because we have 45 shaded pieces, the denominator is going to be 100 because the total amount of pieces is 100. You can also write that as a decimal. 0.45 of the grid is green, but you can also represent that as a percent, right? 45 per, right? Per, another way of thinking of per is of the cent of the 100, 45 of the 100, 45% is green. A percent is a special ratio that compares a number to 100. So 45% means 45 out of 100, or 45 per 100, or 45%. Right? So 3 ways, and this is the 3 ways that we're going to be focusing on today. Right? A decimal, a fraction, and as a percent. Alright, because percent means per 100, think this should be divided by 100. So then 50%, you can't really see this, but I'll rewrite it. Right? 50% really means 50 over 100. Alright? 100%, I don't need an erase right now, Mr. Cal. 100% really means 100 over 100. Right? Because once again, percent means per 100. So you have 100 per 100, which means exactly 1. Right? So 100% of a 8-slice pizza, right? That means you have exactly 8 slices, right? Whereas 200% equals 200 over 100, right? You divide those numbers, so 200% means double. You have double the amount of whatever value you had before. So again, just think, what we're doing there is just focusing on this idea that percent means per 100, so you're dividing whatever the number is by 100. Couple of examples. All right, so what we're going to do is first we're going to calculate 25% of 80, right? 25% of 80. If you click on the slides, you'll be following along too. Okay, so 25% of 80, as we should be able to see, I'll try to zoom in here on my low budget production. All right, 25% equals 25 over 100, because remember it means 25 per 100. All right? So what we're doing though is we're finding 25% of 80. So that means 25 over 100 multiplied by 80. Oh, went too far. No, I didn't. Okay? So we can rewrite our formula so that it equals, so it rereads as 25 multiplied by 80, all divided by 100, right? Because 25 is the percent. The original number that we are trying to find is 80. So 25 times 80, percent means per 100, so we'll divide that by 100. All right? Rewrite it as this. 25 times by 80. It's in brackets because of order of operations. That's what you do first. All right, this is the big thing. This is what I see some people still struggling with. It's a little bit of a review. Remember, when you're dividing by 100, right, you move the decimal places over 2 places to the left. Okay? So this is our decimal place. Let's say this is our imaginary number. When we multiply it, so when we divide it by 100, because it's 2 zeros, we're moving this over 1 space, 2 space. So this new number would be 3.19 instead of 319. All right? So in this right here, what we have is we have hundreds. We really show you kind of what that looks like. Also here from number, move the places 2 left over. So these are 5 examples of what it would happen if we divided these numbers by 100. So just look at those in case we still need that little bit of a refresher. All right? So moving on, right? Well, this is what we're doing right now. We're finding 25% of 80. 25 times 80 divided by 100. Next slide, right? So what that equals, 25 times 80 is going to be 2,000. Divided by 100 is going to be 20. So 25% of 80 is going to be 20. All right? So far, so good? Let's look at another example. Okay? So 15% of 200 apples are bad. That means, let's say you're at the grocery store and 15%, there's 200 apples in the entire grocery store and 15% of those apples are rotten, right? So what we're going to find out is how many actually are bad. What's the actual number? So once again, 15% equals 15 over 100, right? So 15% or 15 over 100, we're going to multiply it by the total number of apples, which is going to be 200 apples. Okay? So we're going to do the exact same thing we did before. We're going to rewrite our formula so that it's the 15% multiplied by the 200 apples divided by 100, right? We divided by 100 because percent means per 100. 15, oh, don't want to do that. 15 times 200 divided by 100. Once again, we're going to solve this and then move it over 2 decimal places. To the left. I think that was a Beyonce song. To the left, to the left. Right? So we get 3,000, right? That's the answer we get. When we multiply our 15 by 200, there's an invisible little decimal in all numbers, right? We take that over, we're going to move it 1, 2. So this is going to become 30.00 or 30. So that means 30 apples are bad apples. Okay, the main focus, right? Main focus of this lesson is understanding that it means percent, right? So percent, so if I have 15%, that means 15 divided by 100. And that's going to give me my 15%. Or it's going to give me my decimal places. Again, we have 15. We move it over 2, right? That means 15% is the equivalent of, and we're going to focus more on this starting next lesson. All right? But this is our highlight. Percent. You have a little quick kind of formative assessment. Please get that done. Let me know if you have any questions.